So good morning, everyone, first of all, and thanks so much for joining us this morning. I'm Holly Hughes, the Marketing Manager here at Keelover, and shortly be introducing you to Sam, our Head of SEO, who will be walking you through how to conduct a content audit today. So just quickly, for those of you who are new to Keelover, we are a digital performance agency based in the heart of Bristol. Or as I like to say, we're a nutty team of technical experts specialising in PPC and SEO, which is strengthened by the fact that we are one of the UK's top fully accredited Google Premier partners. And what is interesting to know is that as an agency, we form part of a wider group called the Audience Collective, a UK-wide group of experts, strategists, researchers, creatives, and digital media buyers. So everything digital media marketing, we are experts in. So today's discussion points, which is going to be quite a lot to get through, is going to be a jam-packed webinar with lots of tips. Firstly, how search engines and humans read your content, how to audit your content to drive performance and rankings increases, how to benchmark your content against your competitors, and then how to plan page redesigns to enhance rankings and conversions. And there'll probably be quite a lot of technical elements today, so if you do have any questions, just drop them in chat box or Q&A and we shall answer them at the end. And without further ado, over to you, Sam, if you could introduce yourself.
I think you kind of introduced me already. I'm Sam, I'm the head of SEO at Keelover. I've been in the industry for about 12 years now. I manage the team here. Today, can I have control?
You do have control.
Oh, I have a delay then.
Yeah, there we are.
There we go. All right, today I'm basically going to run you through how to do your own content audit. This is something we do all the time for clients, and really it's about getting an understanding of how your content is performing on site, both from a kind of SEO rankings perspective and a kind of performance perspective, i.e. is it generating sales and leads. I'm going to be using 3 tools today, and we are going to do this kind of as step by step so that you can hopefully take this back to your own place of work and follow it through yourself. And obviously we're on hand to help if you need us. So we're going to use Screaming Frog, which is a website crawler, and it's free. If your site's over 500 pages, then you need the paid version, but it's something ridiculously cheap, like £100 a year. Basically, this allows you to crawl an entire website, pull out key data points like URLs, H1s, meta titles, content length, this kind of stuff. We're going to use SEMrush because it allows you to export all of your rankings data, and obviously analytics because it gets you all of your traffic data. Basically, we're going to get these deep insights into rankings, content, and conversions so that we can make improvements to our pages. So first up is how search engines and humans actually read content, because it's important to understand the kind of different ways each kind of thing reads the content so we can understand how to structure it. So search engines obviously read your content top to bottom. They're looking at the H1 meta title as primary indicators of content topic, and then they use latent semantic indexing to understand content. This is basically looking at groups of words in relation to other words and kind of topic clusters to understand what a page is about. They obviously can't read imagery, so they read the alt tags on your images, but they're also nowadays analysing user time on page and bounce rates to actually understand how relevant the content is for a particular search that it serves the page for. What it does is it weighs your content against all of the other content on the web to understand where it appears for any given keyword or where it should appear. Whereas obviously humans don't work like that. We skim read, we skip to the relevant sections of content in longer pages, we look at titles, bullet points, graphics, all of that kind of stuff. So when we're looking at our own content, we need to strike this perfect balance between the two, essentially. So we're going to dive into how to actually audit your content. So first off, we're going to use Screaming Frog. What we can do with Screaming Frog is you input your URL of your homepage, and it'll follow all of the internal links of your site and pull out a document with that information all mapped to all of the key data points like H1s, meta titles, etc. So first step up is we just get all of that data, export it into Excel. Then we go into SEMrush and we pull out all of our ranking data so that we can then map that to our URL structure. If you don't have access to SEMrush, you can just sign up for a free trial cheekily, just to get your data once. And we'll obviously pull out all of that data from organic search and then feed that into that document. Finally, we're going to pull out all of our Google Analytics data. When I'm doing a content audit, normally I will look at either 6 months of data or 12 months of data. 12 months of data tends to be better because it will cover, all seasonal variations and all periods. But if you're a very high volume site, then 6 months worth of data is absolutely fine. What we now do is we have all of this in an Excel and we marry it all together so that we've got a URL, page views, bounce rates, keyword rankings, metadata, internal links, content length, goal conversions, or e-commerce data. So basically this unified spreadsheet allows you to quickly skim across every line and pull out insights about a particular page. So we're going to work through like all of these individually to try and show you how you can actually improve your content.
So going back to that spreadsheet, is that something that you just put together yourself when you've collated all the data from those 3 tools?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Amalgamate this into one spreadsheet essentially.
Okay.
It's a slightly painful bit of work, but it's it's the best way to get all of that data together. So next, we've actually got to look at the most important part, which is actually getting the insights together. So obviously the key obvious considerations is the page actually ranking, and did the page generate high levels of engagement, low bounce rate, high time on page, low exit rates, unless it's your checkout page, of course, and is it generating leads, sales, or conversion actions? So those are kind of the really top level stuff. The first thing we do when we get this big sheet is we pull out any pages that have no traffic, because if a page hasn't had any traffic, or on high volume sites, less than 120 visitors a year, we know that it's low value. It's not lifting any weight in terms of engaging customers on site or actually generating organic traffic or leads. So we pull those to one side straight away because we already know that those pages probably need to be removed or they need to be completely updated. So that's like the easiest set of kind of insights you'll generate from this exercise. Then what we do, really simple, really basic Excel stuff, conditional formatting to highlight in red basically anything that's wrong. So page views less than your chosen threshold. Now, you should set this based on what is a good amount of traffic for your site. So when you've got that full set of page data, excluding like your top level, like homepage or service page, for all of those sub pages, you should be able to quickly identify what's good for you and what's bad for you. Typically, if it's less than 240 views in a year, we know that it's got room for improvement. But on really high volume traffic sites, actually that threshold could be much higher. It could be 1,200, 2,000 or more. Bounce rates, anything greater than 50% is normally a good cutoff point. The exception to this is quite often actually if you're driving massive volumes of paid advertising traffic to key pages, that bounce rate can often be a little bit higher. So again, some flexibility in how you apply this to your site is kind of the best. Content length less than 500. Instantly we know that there's going to be opportunities to improve content and engagement on that page. Obviously you'll have some pages like your contact page where you probably don't need 500 words. There's a kind of general rule to apply across the data sheet. It gives you a good starting point to start looking at individual pages. And then the metadata, meta title lengths, anything less than 40, meta description lengths, anything less than 140 characters. And then obviously, finally, it's less than X sales goals conversions. Now, obviously, not every page will have sales goals or conversions. It depends what level of goal you're actually tracking through Tag Manager or whatever. If you're tracking email signups, contact form downloads, etc., then every page hopefully should have some kind of goal conversion on it. What you end up with is a kind of a spreadsheet that looks something like this, where you can quickly read across any single line of that spreadsheet and find all of the problems with that page, whether its keyword rankings are high enough, whether the content's not correct, and how well that's actually performing for you. So when you're doing this on scale, you might end up with 1,000 pages, 500 pages that need reviewing. And obviously you then need to prioritize those based on which ones are the highest value, which ones have got the most keyword opportunities, etc. So what we're going to do now is actually look at how you address each element of the red, because what we want to do over time is take this sheet from having reds to essentially having no reds. And this is an ongoing process. This is going to take you months and months probably. So it's one of those things you always want to triage pages based on which ones are performing the worst and which ones have the most potential upside for your business. So page views, if it's below your threshold, we want to check the keyword targeting because it's probably not generating organic traffic. Look at increasing the content length or potentially remove the page or amalgamate it with other pages. There are some pages on your website where you might need to have them, but page views are already going to be low, but that's fine. Just ignore that page and move on. Bounce rate, checking the content structure is always the big one. If you have got a big wall of text, it's not surprising that your bounce rate's high, but you also, most importantly, probably want to check your mobile performance and make sure there's no server or code issues that are causing poor layout performance. Not accidentally hiding the CTA 20 scrolls down on a mobile, all of that kind of stuff. A lot of that stuff can always be fixed once you've looked at the top level technical issues, like how well your server's responding, whether you've got responsive design. It's all then about structure, making sure your content is easily readable. Rankings, of course, is the obvious one. It's just, have you actually got the correct keywords on that page? With that, we then look at benchmarking your content against competitors, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and making sure that you've actually optimized correctly that text for primary and secondary keywords. Meta titles are the easy ones. Your meta title should contain your H1, your primary keyword, and has got 55 character limit. It's actually a pixel limit, but 55 characters gets you near enough. Meta descriptions don't affect your SEO, but they should always include a call to action to encourage clicks, whether that's book an inquiry now or whatever it might be. Internal links is something, it's a bit trickier to kind of work out insights because it's not really about content. It's about, again, how search engines read websites, because the way we are telling search engines what our most important pages are on our website is actually by the number of in-links we have to those pages. So your internal link architecture, which is pulled out from that Screaming Frog call, it should go, homepage has the most links, primary services or sales pages next, and then resources, information, and blog and stuff right down at the bottom. If your internal link architecture isn't reflective of that, you need to go and address the structural issues so that you are prioritizing your most important sales pages within that architecture. Because that means you have more opportunities on your site to send your traffic to that sales page, and you're telling search engines these are our important pages. Right, content length. If there's content less than 1,000 words on a key page, then there's going to be opportunities to increase its rankings by adding more. As we're going to talk about in a minute, 2,000 words is the kind of average top 3 ranking page now. So that's something you've got to bear in mind and kind of aim towards. And last is goal completions. This is more about thinking about what goal conversions can be added to a page. Link clicks, downloads, forms, pop-ups, chats, all of these kind of things, links to products and services. So for each page, you want to draw up a kind of worksheet of here are the things that could be improved on that page, and prioritize them based on which pages are going to generate the most business for you. So because we don't have huge amounts of time, I've done quite a top level way we look at competitors. Obviously, we've got that key statement, average page 2,000 words now. So normally if you get up to that level for a key service page, key resource page, it's got much better chances of ranking. But what we also want to do when we're thinking about our content, particularly when we're looking at how we prioritize updates, is actually going and finding the kind of top 5 pages for any keyword topic. So that's literally put in the keyword, go and review the top pages, and you just ask yourself, what's better than my content about this page? What calls to action are we actually using? And what are my competitors using? And basically, this is an exercise for you to think about what best in class looks like. What can we do to make our page stand out amongst the millions of pages that Google might be indexing for this keyword? And one of the aspects is obviously content length, but there's also other things. Can we include video, tools, improve structure, format this better, and have more actual engagement opportunities with that page? So there we go. With competitor metrics, what we can do, you can actually, if you've got time and energy, you can actually use the tools we've already talked about to pull out the same set of data for your competitors. And then you can really quickly apply length and things to the same kind of spreadsheet format to quickly compare like for like, which if you've got time is a really good exercise to do. But the main things we're going to be looking at with it is just comparing content length, their supporting content, internal links to that content. And if you've got access to tools like SEMrush and things, you can actually grab their external links to that content as well. Because obviously it's a bit beyond the remit of looking just at a content audit, but obviously backlinks are one of the kind of key ranking factors. So that might be one of the reasons their content's being pushed above yours, even if it's not hitting that kind of threshold of long form, etc. But
Sam, just quickly on backlinks, have you got any tips on how to sort of acquire quality links?
Backlinks?
Yeah.
That would kind of have to be an entire webinar.
Okay.
That's a bit of a mammoth topic, that one. Something we can definitely talk about at another time. But backlinks, obviously, it's much more about PR, creating really valuable resources, all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah. So lastly, we kind of look at their content structure and formatting. So once you've got all this data, so you should now have kind of a really good overview of how your content's performing, what's doing well, what isn't doing well. And then you can actually get to the stage where you can start updating your content. Ideally, you'll have looked at competitors, you'll have all of the key data, you know exactly the kind of fundamental issues, and all you've got to do now is actually update it. So what I like, we're introducing the kind of competitor analysis allows you to really effectively direct your energy, because overall doing these content audits is kind of one of the lowest cost activities you can do to really quickly increase your rankings. So when you've kind of mapped out, okay, this competitor's got 5,000 links to this page and it's 5,000 words, you can go, okay, we still want to do that page, it's important, but let's prioritize this subset of pages where competition's less fierce, content quality amongst competitors is lower, and we can get really quick wins there because we can develop those 5 to 10 landing pages, get them live, get them ranking, and then start making inroads to the really the really hard pages that are most competitive. So we can basically very quickly scale up by doing this exercise. And when it comes to actually then putting those pages together, one of the most common roadblocks we always have is that a lot of people don't want to put 2,000 words on their pages, 10,000 words on a page, because let's face it, we feel a lot of the time that we're writing for search engines and not for users. And it is a big problem in the web these days, which I'm sure you're all aware of. Try and go and get a recipe to make spag bol, and you have to read 5,000 words before you actually get to the blooming recipe. So that is likely to change over time because it's not the best user experience, and that really is what Google is trying to push us all towards. It's making really good website experiences for people. So what we have to do is strike a balance when we're thinking about redesigning these pages. So always like to start a page with 3 paragraphs before the main call to action, which should be, here's the key bullet points of this service, the key takeaways from this page, and here's the call to action. Give us a call. Fill in this form. That way, you provide the reader who doesn't want detail with a very quick, this is this, great, I can get in touch. Then push all of your other content below that fold, essentially. And just think about the best ways to structure this in terms of design. Carousels, tabbed content, can we have a sliding load of case studies at the bottom of the page so that actually the page doesn't feel gigantic? Because as soon as a page starts feeling that way, it can become it becomes less engaging to consumers. Use rich media. Obviously, Google owns YouTube, so including YouTube videos on your page where they're relevant is always a good signal for them. Use extensive bullet points, and don't write really wordy paragraphs. And unless you're describing the technical workings of a rocket where it needs that, everything else should be short and punchy. And when you start planning out your pages like this, you will end up with something that is going to engage people much, much better, and also create more opportunities to actually convert those people. So with that done, you then have to schedule this in again, because what we want to do is continually update and review this data. So assuming you can get the first rounds of changes done over a 6-month period or an 8-month period, you then want to do the exercise again, because what we want to start seeing is less and less reds across that board. So we can compare the 2 crawls and make sure that we're bringing that red down, bringing performance up, and bringing goal completion up as well. So we should be able to track over time that we've improved the rankings, traffic and conversions, and dwell time, reduce the bounce rate. This is never you're never going to finish this exercise, because rankings are always going to fluctuate, competitors are always going to do more. So it's more about just building on your own successes and kind of pushing yourselves up the chain as quickly as possible. And that is it from me.
Questions? I think, Sam, you should be able to oh, hang on.
You will be seeing the presentation after the call, yes.
Yeah, very true. Well, you flew through that, in fairness. I didn't think we were going to get through it that quickly. But so how often, in terms of clients, how often would you do a full content review?
It does depend on, for us, it depends on site size and what traffic levels are like when we start working with a client. If a client's relatively new to digital marketing, we probably wouldn't do it until first kind of 12 months. If their rankings aren't very strong, we like to build rankings first through the initial round of content optimization. Then we would typically do this every 6 or 12 months, because what we normally find is we'd run a client through a series of updates across all of their key landing pages and obviously fix any technical issues with the site. And then that would give us enough data to kind of see how well those rankings are progressing. Then we can start analyzing traffic performance. With some clients, we'll find, traffic levels might be high, but conversion rates might be low. So we do a slightly different version of this, specifically looking at conversion metrics and user journeys. And then we kind of integrate content audit with actually looking at the way traffic is going through the site so that we can refine that user journey as well at the same time.
Okay, so I've got an interesting question here from Amy. So she says, I work in the events team for a charity. Our event pages are a separate website from the main charity page. These pages contain the website for each event, a registration system, and then inbuilt fundraising pages. So the fundraising pages have the same starting URL as the website. If they were included in any analysis, we'd probably end up with 3,000 plus pages, and we wouldn't want to include these in our analysis anyway. Is there a way of excluding these in Screaming Frog and SEMrush?
So Screaming Frog will just follow every URL on your website. So if I'm understanding that correctly, they would still have some indicator of them, whether that's like / fundraising or / event type. So you could just strip those out of your analysis, i.e. you select all of those URLs and remove them. Those pages are unlikely, from a SEMrush data point of view, those pages are unlikely to be ranking, so we probably wouldn't be pulling out ranking data for them anyway. If they are ranking pages, then I would say that they should be included in your auditing anyway. I mean, 3,000 pages is kind of, not, you can just strip out by literally choosing pathways. With that, I'd probably be looking at making sure you've got really good conversion tracking on anything that sends someone to those fundraising pages. Does that answer your question? Because I might have to look at an example URL otherwise.
Yes, it does. And from my point of view, Sam, from all of the data that you've shared today, what would be the first thing to do, sort of next steps to get started? Because it can seem quite daunting process when you look at all of the technical aspects. Break it down for us. What are the simple things to do next?
I mean, the most simple thing is just to start getting a handle of your data. If you want to, you can do a much more simplified version of this, where you just look at your analytics data. You just take a year's analytics data and just use that to start generating insight. I think you get more from it if you actually pull apart your rankings and other kind of facets, because you'll have more insight in how to improve pages. But you can just go in and look at bounce rates or any other aspect or view, dwell time on your key pages, and you can quite quickly start spotting problems. So you can just go, okay, these pages aren't performing. It's more making sure, from my perspective, that you have a kind of a process in place where you are thinking about this data on a regular basis and using it to refine your business over time, essentially.
Yeah, because I think, our first webinar, which was SEO versus PPC, I think the conclusion there was SEO is the long-term gain and ongoing, slowly increasing results. So it needs constant monitoring, I guess.
Absolutely. Never stops.
No, it keeps you very busy, that's for sure. And for clients, how often do you do sort of review the audit for the content specifically in lead gen?
I mean, it depends. You know, as I said, it's normally a process where we start doing it and then we refine it. Normally, we'll find key pages. We'll always start prioritizing based on what the potential value of a page is. So if we've got a one or 3 core service pages where we need to generate leads, those will be the key pages to test. And what we will also start doing eventually is working with developers to do A/B testing on core pages, because sometimes it's really obvious that your content structure is not quite right, and we'll come up with a better version. When you're further down the process, analytics gives you this amazing tool to basically split traffic across version A and version B of a page. So particularly when we're looking at lead gen, this is a really good way to test a almost entirely new design of a page without actually impacting your rankings or anything. Google just splits that traffic. So half the traffic will see version A, your current version, half the traffic will see version B, which is your new test version. And then you can monitor conversions across those 2 pages. And obviously, if the new version is significantly higher, you can then push that live to replace the old page. So that's kind of a much later down the stage part of the process. But that's how you then, this stage is really getting you from underperforming pages to pages that really perform well. And then you can start going, okay, now we just want to move that lead generation by 1 or 2%, even 0.5%. If a page is getting thousands of visitors, 0.5% increase in lead conversion just from changing a few things, layouts, can make a big difference.
We've got another question from Rachel here. She says, do you have any advice for purely e-commerce brands, as the 2,000 words recommendation doesn't work for us as it's not text-based website as such?
Yeah, absolutely. So
good question.
Right, there's two facets to this. So product categories, no, you're never going to want 2,000 words on those particularly, although you can have above and below the fold content. Product pages, you do want to be aiming for that kind of, if you've got evergreen products, then you do want, if you look at how the way Amazon structures its product pages, they have always got thousands and thousands of words. There's Q&As, frequently asked questions, shipping return, all of this kind of stuff that they've got on those pages. So on those pages, I would generally go through that. With actual just like category pages where you might have multiple products appearing, you can still look at the same set of data, because you'll find technical issues and those kind of things. What you also want to be looking at more in detail is user flow, though, because you want to make sure that you're ordering your products correctly, your filters are being used correctly, all of those kind of things. So I will always still say you need content on those pages to rank, even if it's a lower volume. But then it's about making sure your content doesn't interfere with the main point of the page, which is getting people to actually buy things. I think with those, you might end up excluding those, but you also want to be thinking about how your soft traffic is being driven into the site, whether that's fashion guides, user guides, your blog, all of those kind of things. So most of this stuff I would be applying to those sections of the website to work out where you can drive more traffic into the site that can then be pushed into the e-com.
You talked, obviously 2,000 words is what Google sort of recommends, and they keep increasing it. But how do you sort of envisage Google sort of changing that in the future?
Yeah, it's not Google recommending, unfortunately. It's been a bit of an arms race. When I started, it was 300 words on a page, and it seems to go up every year as everyone competes with everyone else to write more content. I think the problem that Google will address eventually, when the algorithm's slightly more intelligent, which it's getting there with kind of advancements in AI. But what we're going to have is, at the moment, there's a bit of a disparity between content length and content quality, with the kind of assumption across the market that more content is actually better. And the reality, as we all know, using the internet, is sometimes more content really isn't better. Sometimes you want a real snapshot, which is part of the reason video content is so much more popular generally. So I think we're a little way off it being a big issue, but I think Google will eventually start looking more actively at actually the structure of content. So bullet points, readability, which readability is already a small factor, but I think it will get more weight, and they'll really be focusing on user journeys. So what Google has been toying with is when you visit a page from the search engines, obviously it will track that keyword, and as well as looking at how you're behaving on that site, Google is then also looking whether you go back to the search index and click on other links for that same query. Because if you are, it means that page that it served to you did not answer your question. So Google's now looking at this relevancy, and then it will start shifting your rankings based on that. If 100 people go to your page, but they all go back to the search engine and have to click on another link to actually get the answer they want, then your page isn't delivering what it should be.
We've got another question here from William, who says, on a website generally, what content improvements should be prioritized to improve rankings and attract more users?
Typically, it's your highest value sales pages. It depends on your business type, obviously. Normally, it's always service-based pages, whether that's whatever your biggest driver of business is, and restructuring those, making sure they've got the correct keywords in them. That's going to drive the most benefit. Typically, you can work kind of in the hierarchy of a website. Home pages, service pages, resource pages. They're going to be the most important pages to optimize. Blogs, news stories, that kind of stuff, case studies are very unlikely to ever drive substantial organic traffic. So then it's just about making sure that content is available when people need it, and using that content as a way to build internal link signals to your high priority pages. Most of the most common optimizations we do with corporate blogs and things like that, it's actually more about making sure that the user journey loops going back, i.e. going back to the services or case studies or whatever it needs to, so that there's always a way for, if someone is on that page, we are directing them back to the important page.
I hope that answers that question, William. But if we don't have any other questions, thanks so much, Sam. That's been a jam-packed journey of how to audit your content. As I did mention, if you do sort of have any further questions as you've sort of digesting what we've discussed today, then either email Sam or myself, which you can see emails there, and we're happy to sort of answer any further questions. Also, if you would like a copy of this presentation to refer back to, that's fine. Just drop me an email and I can sort that out for you. But thanks so much for your time, everyone. We hope you found it really useful. Thanks, Sam, as well, our SEO technical expert. And enjoy the rest of your day, guys.